They tried to hide what was discovered 36,000 feet below the ocean's surface. The ocean is vast, endless, and alive. It covers more than 70% of our planet, yet remains mostly uncharted. But within this great blue expanse lies something different, something darker. A place where the earth itself folds into a wound, so deep it swallows all light, all warmth, all sense of familiarity. The Mariana Trench. It is often called Earth's deepest scar, a fracture in the crust where the Pacific plate is forced beneath the Philippine plate. But to describe it in geological terms alone is to miss the truth. For the trench is not just a feature of the planet. It is an abyss, an otherworldly chasm that embodies everything we do not understand about the sea. At nearly 36,000 feet, the trench is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. If Everest were dropped into its depths, its peak would still vanish beneath miles of water. At such depths, the sun is meaningless. Darkness reigns eternally, an ancient darkness untouched since before humanity learned to walk upright. Down here, the rules change. The water pressure at the Challenger Deep, the trench's deepest known point, is more than 1,000 times that at the surface. To compare, a single human standing at sea level experiences about 15 pounds of pressure per square inch. At the bottom of the trench, that number swells to 8 tons, pressing against every inch. Enough to crush steel, enough to silence almost all life as we know it. And yet, the trench is not lifeless. Against impossible odds, strange creatures survive in this eternal night. Transparent, fragile, shaped by pressure and hunger, their forms seem born from dreams or nightmares. They flash with eerie bioluminescence, creating bursts of light that mimic stars in the void. Down here, survival itself is an act of defiance. It is this paradox that draws us. The trench is hostile and yet alive, silent and yet filled with voices we cannot always explain. Each attempt to map it, to study it, to penetrate its mysteries, leaves us with more questions than answers. For most of human history, the trench was not a line on a map, but an idea, a place that existed in whispers and imagination. Early seafarers spoke of seas so deep and black they could hide monsters the size of islands. In myth, these depths became home to leviathans, creatures banished to the furthest reaches of the ocean. And in a way, those myths were not wrong. The trench is a place where the line between real and imagined blurs, where fact and legend bleed into one another. It wasn't until 1875 that humanity finally confirmed its existence. A British expedition aboard the Challenger recorded soundings that revealed a trench deeper than any other known. The discovery was so astonishing that the deepest part of the chasm would later bear the ship's name, Challenger Deep, and yet, more than a century later, we have barely touched its secrets. Only a handful of manned missions have descended into the abyss. Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh reached the bottom in 1960, describing strange, shrimp-like creatures moving in the sediment. 52 years later, filmmaker James Cameron followed, alone in a submersible designed to withstand the weight of an ocean. He, too, described alien landscapes of desolation and eerie beauty. But these are brief glimpses, fleeting intrusions into a world that swallows machines and mends metal. Even today, with satellite mapping and remote-operated vehicles, more is unknown than known. The trench remains one of the most inaccessible places on Earth. Not because we lack the technology to go there, but because each journey is fraught with risk. The ocean resists intrusion. It holds its secrets tightly. Perhaps there is a reason for this. For the trench is not just a scientific curiosity. It is a place of forbidden knowledge. What lies in its depths may not be meant for us to uncover. Strange sounds recorded in the deep have defied explanation. Shapes flicker across sonar, too large, too irregular, to be dismissed as ordinary sea life. And there are whispers, unconfirmed reports of things seen, but never acknowledged. Fragments of stories tucked away in the silence of classified files. Some say the trench is alive, that the earth itself groans and shifts in its belly. Others suggest it is a gateway, a passage to worlds beneath or beyond, where alien life could thrive unseen. The most unsettling idea of all is the simplest, that the trench is watching us, that in its depths, something vast and patient waits, indifferent to our fleeting civilizations. We stand at the edge of this abyss as children once stood at the edge of dark forests, knowing that something was out there, but not knowing what. The trench humbles us. It reminds us that our mastery of the earth is fragile, our knowledge incomplete. We live on islands of certainty, surrounded by seas of ignorance, and the Mariana Trench is the deepest sea of all. Science can measure its pressure, its depth, its coordinates. But science cannot answer the deeper question. Why does it feel forbidden? Why does every descent inspire awe mixed with dread? Perhaps it is because we recognize something primal in the trench, a reminder of how small we are, a reminder of the darkness that existed before light. When we peer into its depths, we are not just exploring the ocean, we are looking into a mirror of the unknown. The trench reveals not only the limits of our world, but the limits of ourselves. And it whispers a warning. Some places were not meant to be conquered, only respected. For all our ambition, our machines, our restless curiosity, we may not be prepared for what waits in the abyss. The trench has existed for millions of years, silent, hidden, untouched. It will outlast us, as it has outlasted empires, species, and ages. The question is not whether we can reach its bottom. We already have. The question is what will happen when we go too far. And in that silence, in that black and endless descent, the trench answers only with more silence, as though it is waiting. Beneath the rolling tides and violent tempests lies a silence so vast, it seems eternal. The ocean has always been more than water. It is a mirror of fear and faith, of myth and memory. For ancient civilizations gazing out at its endless horizon, the sea was not merely a boundary, it was a living entity, unpredictable and hungry. The abyss was not just depth, but destiny. And from its blackened chasms rose legends that still haunt the collective human mind. The ancients told stories of dragons that slumbered beneath the waves, stirring only to devour ships whole. These leviathans, too immense to imagine, became symbols of divine wrath and punishment. In the Hebrew Bible, the Leviathan is described as a monstrous serpent, an embodiment of chaos itself. To the Norse, there was Jarmungander, the world serpent, coiled around the earth, waiting for the end of days to rise from the sea and drown the land. The Greeks spoke of Scylla and Charybdis, monstrous guardians of the straits, where jagged rocks and whirlpools swallowed sailors into the darkness. Each culture, divided by geography, carried in its myth a common fear, that the deep was alive and that its appetite was endless. But myths rarely emerge from nothing. The ocean conceals truths that can be stranger than imagination. For centuries, mariners returned from voyages with tales of creatures half seen in the spray, the whip of a colossal tail, the glint of an unblinking eye beneath the surface. Were these sea dragons, or encounters with beasts science had not yet named? Giant squids, once dismissed as fantasy, proved to be real, their massive tentacles occasionally washing ashore, evidence of battles waged in darkness, far below human reach. What then of the creatures still unseen? Could the myths of leviathans be rooted in fleeting glimpses of abyssal giants? Reminders that we are intruders at the edge of another world? The ocean was not only feared for its monsters, but for its hunger for civilizations. Entire worlds, they said, were swallowed whole. In Plato's dialogues, the tale of Atlantis emerges, a magnificent empire that fell out of divine favor and sank beneath the waves, lost forever to the sea. Though many dismiss Atlantis as allegory, the story endures, reflecting the eternal human suspicion that the ocean does not merely erase, it remembers. Similar legends echo across the globe. Lioness said to have drowned off the coast of Cornwall. Yonaguni in Japan, where divers still explore stone-like structures that some claim are remnants of a lost city. And the Tales of Mu, a continent swallowed by the Pacific. The sea has always been a thief of memory, and in its silence, imagination supplies what evidence cannot. Yet these myths are more than fantasy. They reveal how humanity has long used the sea as a canvas to project its deepest fears. To stand at the shoreline is to confront a frontier both physical and psychological, an abyss not only of saltwater, but of the mind. To ancient eyes, the trench was not a geological feature. It was a cosmic divide. It separated the known from the unknowable, the safe from the damned. Crossing it was not just a voyage. It was a test of faith against the devouring unknown. History provides accounts that read like myth, yet remain anchored in reality. In the 13th century, Norwegian texts warned of the Kraken, a monstrous cephalopod so vast it could drag entire ships beneath the waves. Mariners claimed to see it rise like an island, only to realize too late that its form was flesh, not rock. For centuries, scholars laughed at the idea, until modern biology confirmed that colossal squids exist, their eyes the size of dinner plates, dwelling in black waters no sunlight reaches. What else remains unseen, waiting in that abyss? Even the abyssal trenches themselves were given a place in spiritual lore. Polynesian navigators, masters of the Pacific, spoke of the ocean as a realm where gods slept in volcanic underworlds, their dreams manifesting as tempests above. For the Japanese, the Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea, dwelled in a palace at the ocean floor, commanding storms and earthquakes. These stories imbued the deep with will and consciousness, transforming the abyss into more than geography. It became a living judge. Perhaps this is why every myth of the ocean carries with it a note of warning. The sea offers bounty, but it takes more than it gives. Its legends remind us of humility before a force that cannot be conquered, only endured. To see a wave crash against stone is to see the same violence that leveled cities, shattered fleets, and erased cultures without leaving a trace. Beneath the myths lies truth, that the ocean is patient, and that nothing built too close to its edge is ever truly safe. The trench, then, is not only a place of science. It is a graveyard of forgotten worlds and a wellspring of imagination. It exists at the border between reason and reverence, where myth refuses to die because the abyss refuses to be explained. The stories of sea monsters and drowned empires linger not because they are false, but because they are incomplete. Something in the deep feeds them, a glimpse, a disappearance, a sound carried through the black water. Even now, modern recordings capture unidentifiable noises from beneath the surface. Strange, powerful sounds echoing across hundreds of miles. The ocean speaks, though we do not yet understand its language. When we hear these voices, we call them by mythic names. The Bloop, Julia, slow down, assigning mystery or explanation fails. But perhaps this is simply the continuation of an ancient tradition, turning the abyss into story so that its silence does not consume us. In the end, myths endure not because they are disproven, but because they embody a truth deeper than fact, that the ocean is the last true frontier, vast, unyielding, and alive with secrets. The leviathans may be metaphors, the sunken kingdoms allegories, and yet they whisper to us still, because we have never stopped fearing what dwells where light cannot follow. And so, the trench is more than rock and water. It is a threshold, a cultural chasm, a psychological wound, a reminder that humanity's empire ends at the shore. Beyond it lies a realm older than history, deeper than imagination, and darker than fear itself. The legends of the deep are not relics of the past. They are warnings written in water that the abyss is watching, and that we are not alone in its gaze. Sound travels differently in the ocean. It moves farther, lingers longer, and shapes the hidden world beneath the waves. To most, the sea is silent, a vast, muffled expanse. But to those who listen carefully, the deep is anything but quiet. It groans, it cracks, it whispers in frequencies our bodies can feel more than hear. Some of these noises we understand: the rumble of tectonic plates shifting, the echoes of storms hammering the surface, the distant calls of whales. But some sounds defy explanation, and one of them has haunted scientists for decades. In 1997, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded something in the Pacific Ocean that should not exist. A sound so loud, so vast, it reverberated across sensors placed thousands of miles apart. It rose in pitch, then fell, a deep and primal moan that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The scientists called it the Bloop. At first, the explanations were practical. Shifting icebergs, they said, a natural fracture magnified across the abyss. But the Bloop was many times louder than the loudest whale ever measured, louder than any living creature known to science. It carried with it a resonance that felt alive. For a moment, humanity glimpsed the possibility that something unimaginable stirred beneath the waves. Official statements soon steered the conversation toward ice. Government agencies reassured the public. There was nothing mysterious here, only the groaning of frozen water breaking apart. But the explanation was too neat, too dismissive. If ice alone could scream like that, why had it never been recorded before? Why did the sound seem to pulse with intent, rising and falling like a call? The questions multiplied, but the answers grew quiet, and the Bloop was not alone. Other anomalies emerged in the decades that followed. Slow down, a dragging wail that lasted several minutes before fading into silence. Julia, a mournful murmur that filled an entire quadrant of the Pacific. Upsweep, a seasonal cascade of tones whose origin no one could pinpoint. Each sound was catalogued, given a name, then buried in technical reports. Each one a ghostly reminder that the abyss speaks in a language we cannot yet translate. What makes these recordings so unnerving is not only their volume, but their place of origin. Many of them trace back to regions of the Pacific close to the Mariana Trench, the deepest known point on Earth, a gash in the seafloor nearly 7 miles down. If anything were to dwell there, hidden from light and pressureless imagination, it would be a creature beyond comprehension. Some have whispered that these anomalies are the voices of giants, beasts that make whales seem small, their bodies pressing against tectonic plates as they shift in the darkness. Others suggest weapons testing, secret technologies cloaked in the ocean's veil. But even the most rational explanations carry shadows. Why would governments move so quickly to downplay these mysteries? Why would the largest sound ever recorded by man be explained with little more than a shrug? The dread lies not in what we know, but in what remains concealed. Recordings of the Bloop, when played back at normal speed, echo eerily like the vocalizations of living creatures. A haunting similarity. Scientists insist it is coincidence. But human intuition, honed by millennia of listening for predators in the dark, hears something else. A call. Consider the scale. For the Bloop to have been made by flesh and blood, the organism would dwarf any known life form. Its lungs would be larger than ships, its body spanning city blocks. The very idea strains the limits of imagination. And yet the ocean is vast enough, deep enough, to hide such an impossibility. We have explored less of the abyss than we have of the moon. 90% of its trenches remain untouched, their contents unseen. Who can say with certainty what does or does not exist there? The paranoia deepens when we remember that sound is the only evidence we have. Unlike a sighting, unlike a specimen, it is intangible. It lives only in recordings, in memory. It is proof, yet not proof enough, and in that uncertainty, myth grows. For centuries, sailors told of groaning noises beneath their ships, as if the ocean itself were alive. Folklore speaks of the moans of drowned cities, of leviathans shifting in their sleep, of the sea mourning what it has taken. The bloop may simply be the modern incarnation of those same ancient fears. But even if it is only ice, why does it sound so alive? Why, when played in the dark, does it feel like the ocean is calling us back? There are those who believe the bloop was a warning, a signal too vast for us to interpret, a low-frequency reminder that we are not alone and that our intrusions into the abyss have been noticed. When submarines patrol those depths, when seismic tests rattle the seabed, perhaps something stirs, something that answers not in words but in resonance. A voice we are not meant to hear. Silence has always been the ocean's camouflage, but in the rare moments it speaks, it reveals just enough to remind us that its mysteries are not ours to control. The bloop, Julia, slow down. They are not just sounds. They are fractures in our illusion of understanding. They are evidence that the deep resists our dominion, that it speaks in ways designed to unsettle. And so the trench becomes more than geology. It becomes a cathedral of echoes, a vault where sound becomes myth. Governments may file these noises away as trivia, but the human psyche cannot. We are creatures wired for story, for meaning. We hear the bloop, and we imagine leviathans. We hear slow down, and we imagine a giants slipping back into the black. In the end, the terror lies not in the recordings themselves, but in the possibility they represent, that something vast, intelligent, and entirely unknown calls the trench its home. Until proven otherwise, the abyss remains a choir of unanswered voices. And perhaps that is the truest horror. Not that the sounds are ice, or whales, or shifting plates, but that they are alive and that they are waiting. Life should not exist here. At pressures that could crush steel, in temperatures just above freezing, and in a darkness so complete that the concept of day and night has no meaning, there should only be silence and death. And yet, the trench and its abyssal neighbors teem with life. Not the familiar kind, not the creatures shaped by sun and surface, but organisms so strange they feel more like nightmares than natural beings. The first glimpse of this hidden kingdom came with the anglerfish, a grotesque predator that lures its prey with a glowing lantern protruding from its skull. It drifts in the shadows with teeth, so long they cannot fit in its own mouth. Its body is fragile, gelatinous, a design built not for strength, but for invisibility in the void. And yet, it survives where almost nothing else can, a living paradox, thriving in a place meant to destroy. Then there is the dragonfish, whose body is studded with photophores, tiny lanterns that shimmer across its black flesh. It can open its jaw wide enough to swallow prey nearly its own size, its fangs translucent, curved like glass knives. When seen through submersible lights, it resembles something conjured in a fever dream, a thing half light, half death, suspended in a black sea. These predators share one secret weapon, bioluminescence, light in the darkness. Some use it to lure, some to camouflage, others to communicate in a language still hidden from us. A secret code, exchanged silently, beyond our comprehension. Imagine an ocean where every flash, every flicker, is a sentence in a dialogue we cannot read. If intelligence exists in the abyss, it might not be measured in tools or speech, but in light. And the predators are not alone. Amphipods, tiny crustaceans, resembling insects of the abyss swarm in impossible numbers. Though small, they can strip a carcass to bone in minutes. In the dark trench, where the bodies of whales and other giants eventually sink, they are the undertakers of the deep, cleaning the graveyard with ruthless efficiency. Their bodies have been found surviving radiation and toxins that should kill any surface dweller, proof that evolution has armed them for extremes. But even as these known horrors shock the imagination, scientists whisper of what might remain unseen. For every anglerfish or dragonfish dragged into the light, there may be hundreds of species that remain hidden. Creatures larger, stranger, and more dangerous. Some hypothesize abyssal megafauna colossal predators that hunt in the perpetual dark, so massive they leave scars on the seafloor, so elusive they evade every submersible and sonar sweep. Consider this. Giant squids were dismissed as sailors' fantasy for centuries, until one was finally captured on film in 2004. If such leviathans hid in plain sight just beneath our surface waters, what might still lurk 7 miles deeper? The abyss provides cover unlike any other environment. A creature the length of a football field could move undetected, wrapped in cold silence, its presence revealed only by the faint trail of bioluminescence or the trembling of prey. The crushing pressure of the trench does not forbid size, it may, in fact, demand it. Larger bodies distribute pressure differently. Gigantic life forms could endure what smaller ones cannot. What appears unthinkable might be the rule, not the exception. And here lies the terror. We cannot confirm what lives there, because we cannot go there. Our deepest dives scrape only the surface of the trench. Our cameras fail, our machines collapse, and our bodies would be obliterated long before we reached its floor. For all our technology, the trench remains a black frontier, where evolution plays by rules we cannot see. What is known unsettles us. A fish pulled from the hadal depths sometimes bursts apart when brought upward, its fragile tissues ruptured by the sudden release of pressure. Others carry features that seem borrowed from science fiction. Transparent heads, jaws that dislocate like snakes, stomachs that expand grotesquely to hold meals far too large. These are not evolutionary mistakes. They are perfect adaptations to a world of scarcity and dark violence. But if small predators can adapt so monstrously, what of the unseen giants? Some deep-sea acoustics hint at life beyond measure sounds so loud, so resonant, they could not come from whales. Could it be that the trench shelters predators we dare not name? Predators whose voices we have already recorded, but refuse to recognize? The human mind recoils at the thought of monsters. But sometimes monsters are not metaphors, they are survival, sculpted in flesh. In the absence of light, nature does not grow gentle. It grows merciless. The anglerfish is real. The dragonfish is real. The amphipods are real. What else, then, waits in that abyss, hidden not by imagination, but by pressure and black water? Perhaps the true horror is not that the trench contains monsters, but that it may be their natural refuge. Our surface world is fragile, ephemeral, vulnerable to time. But the abyss has not changed in millions of years. It is as ancient as the planet itself. If creatures live there that defy survival logic, they may also defy extinction. They may have been there long before us, and they may remain long after. We peer into the trench expecting answers, but the abyss replies with silence. In that silence lives the anglerfish, the dragonfish, and 1,000 other predators waiting to be named. But silence can hide more than we are ready to confront. Silence can cradle giants. And if the abyss does indeed shelter something vast, something that dwarfs our imagination, then we must ask, are we truly the apex of this planet? Or merely trespassers, watched by creatures who thrive in a world where light has no dominion? Until the day we can descend without fear, the trench will keep its secrets. But each flicker of bioluminescence, each tooth-like glass, each burst of impossible sound reminds us, life is not just surviving in the abyss, it is thriving, and it may not be done with us yet. The Mariana Trench has always been a forbidden frontier, a place so remote, so hostile, that only a handful of humans have ever dared to descend into its blackness. What they brought back was hailed as science, as triumph, as a story of human endurance. But beneath the headlines lies something else, a silence, a gap, a secrecy that suggests not everything was meant to be told. The first descent came in 1960. Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh entered the Trieste, a submersible with a steel sphere barely large enough to hold them both. They plunged into darkness for nearly 5 hours before touching the seafloor, almost 7 miles down. When they surfaced, they spoke of a flat seabed, of life where none was expected, strange fish and shrimp-like creatures thriving against all scientific logic. But soon after, their descriptions shifted. Official reports minimized the encounter, reduced the sighting of fish to uncertain. Why the change? Was it faulty memory or pressure from above? Some believe they saw more than they were permitted to share. Decades passed before another manned dive dared return. Technology advanced, but governments and research institutions seemed strangely hesitant to revisit the trench. It was as though the abyss had been touched once, acknowledged, then swiftly abandoned. For half a century, its depths remained unwitnessed. Was it funding or something more deliberate, an unspoken understanding that whatever lies down there was better left untouched? Then came filmmaker James Cameron in 2012. Alone, he descended in the deep-sea Challenger, spending hours at the trench's floor. Cameras rolled, instruments gathered samples, and the world awaited revelations. Yet when Cameron surfaced, his findings were strangely subdued. He spoke of barren plains, of a desolate seafloor devoid of spectacle. But rumors swirled. Crew members hinted at moments unrecorded, of anomalies edited out. Why would a man who risked his life for the pursuit of wonder emerge with such an unremarkable tale? Some whisper that what he saw was not fit for public release. Between Piccard and Cameron, other missions, some public, others cloaked in military secrecy, dipped into the trench. In the 1990s, Japanese submersibles reported unidentified moving shadows, too large to classify. Chinese vessels have since explored the Challenger deep, yet their full findings remain unpublished, locked behind classified walls. Nations share what is convenient, never what is unsettling. The deeper the dives, the greater the silence. Perhaps the secrecy is born of fear. The trench is not only a scientific frontier, it is a strategic one. Hidden within its folds could be resources untapped, signals intercepted, or creatures whose existence might unsettle the fragile balance of human certainty. Governments guard secrets not because they are false, but because they are too true, too dangerous. The trench swallows more than explorers. Probes fail. Instruments vanish. Cameras return corrupted, their final frames blurred with shapes that cannot be explained as mere glitches. And each failure is quickly dismissed, the data locked away. What if these are not malfunctions, but encounters? What if the abyss does not welcome our intrusion? Even the most celebrated expeditions tell half-truths. What the public receives is sanitized, polished, fit for consumption. But the gaps between those words, the details omitted, speak louder than what is shared. Why do men risk their lives to plunge into Earth's most alien place, only to return with stories of nothing? Silence is rarely the absence of discovery. More often, it is the burial of it. There are whispers of classified recordings, of bioluminescent flares that did not belong to known species, of sounds low, resonant, mechanical that vibrated through hulls like warnings. If these records exist, they lie buried in military vaults, sealed from the public eye. What was seen in the trench may not have been merely strange, it may have been threatening. The story of exploration is often told as progress, as light pushing back the darkness. But here, in the world's deepest scar, progress stumbles. The trench resists revelation. Every attempt to chart its depths is shadowed by secrecy, every mission clouded by omission. And so the public receives fragments, enough to inspire awe, but never enough to provoke terror. What was truly seen in 1960? What did Cameron leave unsaid in 2012? What did the Japanese and Chinese submersibles record in silence? Perhaps the trench itself enforces the secrecy, swallowing not just light, but truth. Perhaps humanity is not prepared, not yet to face what waits below. And so, the Mariana Trench remains not only a frontier of science, but of conspiracy. Its darkness is more than physical. It is a curtain, drawn tightly, hiding truths too vast, too unsettling, too forbidden to speak aloud. The abyss does not yield its secrets freely, and perhaps it never will. The Mariana Trench is more than a geological scar. It is also a listening post, a void that swallows signals and reflects them in ways no scientist or soldier has fully explained. During the Cold War, when superpowers turned their eyes and ears beneath the waves, the trench became not only a scientific mystery, but a military concern. Declassified naval documents, stripped of their context but heavy with implication, speak of unidentified acoustic anomalies recorded deep in the Pacific. The language is clinical, restrained, but between the lines lies something else. A pattern of sounds that defied explanation, signatures unlike submarines, ice, or seismic movement. The trench seemed to pulse with noises that did not belong. In 1968, U.S. Navy hydrophone arrays, designed to track Soviet vessels, detected massive low-frequency sounds rising from the depths near the trench. Analysts labeled them biological, yet quietly admitted they exceeded the size of any known marine life. Files show that entire teams were assigned to signal suppression, ensuring such anomalies never reached civilian researchers. A secret ocean within the ocean, too destabilizing for the world to know. The Soviets, too, kept watch. Archival fragments from Russian sonar reports reference unidentified moving objects that traveled at impossible speeds along the trench walls. Whether natural or engineered, no explanation was given. The documents end abruptly, as if cut short. What followed remains hidden in classified archives, sealed away as state secrets. Some suggest these anomalies were merely the byproduct of an arms race, technological ghosts haunting the deep. Yet whispers among naval officers tell a different story, that both nations in their silent war stumbled onto something older, larger, and infinitely more disturbing than each other. Even today, military vessels patrol the Pacific with an unease they do not confess. Sonar arrays still register signals that ripple through the trench, deep tones that resonate like the heartbeat of something vast. When released to the public, these recordings are edited, filtered, stripped of their raw terror. What remains is plausible, explainable. The rest is buried. Why? Perhaps because the truth does not serve stability. Imagine the revelation that something immense and living moves within Earth's deepest wound. Imagine the collapse of certainty, the unraveling of scientific dogma, the fear spreading not from governments, but from the public itself. Some secrets are suppressed not because they are false, but because they are too real. The trench, it seems, has always been more than geology. It has been surveillance, silence, and secrecy. An abyss where nations peer downward, not only at each other, but at something waiting in the dark. A presence never named in official language, but suggested in the omissions, the redactions, the abrupt closures of reports. Even in an age of transparency, when declassified files are fed to the public, the most unsettling details remain concealed. What we are given are fragments, carefully chosen. But the patterns in those fragments, unexplained signals, sudden cutoffs, and entire months of missing records speak more loudly than disclosure. The abyss does not reveal itself willingly. And those who know the most about it, the military, the navies, the silent watchers of the deep scene, determined to keep it hidden. For if the trench contains not only pressure, darkness, and silence, but also movement colossal, deliberate, unearthly, and perhaps it holds a truth humanity is not prepared to face. And so the secrets remain, locked beneath waves and redacted lines, echoing in the classified corridors of power. What was recorded in the trench belongs not to science, nor to the public, but to secrecy. The sound of something vast, something unacknowledged, something forbidden waiting still in the depths. The Mariana Trench is not merely a wound in the Earth's crust. It is a world unto itself. Its depths stretch so far from sunlight that the rules we understand above seem meaningless below. In that crushing darkness, life does not resemble life as we know it. Here, creatures glow with their own light, feeding on chemical traces, building fragile existences out of what seems like nothing. This abyssal world may not simply be the last frontier of our oceans. To some, it is a mirror, a glimpse into worlds beyond Earth. When astronomers speak of Europa, the frozen moon of Jupiter, or Enceladus, circling Saturn, their dreams fix upon oceans locked beneath ice. They imagine vents that spew minerals into cold waters, nurturing life hidden from starlight. They theorize about organisms clinging to existence in the same way trench creatures do, not basking in sun, but thriving in chemical fire and darkness. And so the question arises, if we search the heavens for such life, why do we not search deeper into the darkness beneath our own seas? The trench has long been described as alien, not simply for its distance from human reach, but for the nature of its inhabitants. Transparent predators with teeth like glass, worms that sip hydrogen sulfide as if it were nectar, shrimp-like beings that can survive pressures that would crush steel. If these are not alien, then perhaps alien is simply the name we give to life we cannot comprehend. Some researchers whisper theories in careful tones that the trench is not merely analogous to extraterrestrial oceans, but perhaps a true refuge for something not of this earth. If life came to our planet from beyond the stars, drifting in frozen comets or seeded by cosmic dust, where would it endure? Not on the surface, battered by changing climates and human intrusion. No, it would slip downward seeking refuge in the one realm we cannot easily invade, the abyss. There have been rumors, strange accounts buried in the folds of scientific archives. Reports of organisms too vast to catalog, seen only as blurs in the lights of submersibles. Sonar echoes that suggest moving shapes larger than whales, yet silent, unseen. Classified documents hint at sonar returns that behaved with intense circling, observing, then vanishing into impossible depths. Official statements dismiss them as anomalies, glitches, or misreadings, but the pattern remains. Always in the trench, always in silence. For those who dare to speculate, a Mariana Trench becomes more than geology. It becomes an embassy of the unknown. Imagine a creature adapted to pressures so extreme that it could never surface. A being that feeds not on flesh, but on minerals, radiation, or energies we cannot yet define. Imagine intelligence cloaked in bioluminescence, moving like a thought through endless dark corridors of water. Would we even recognize it as life? Or would it slip past our definitions, hiding in plain abyssal sight? Science treads carefully, but mythology does not. Legends of gods from the sea, luminous beings rising from deep blackness, voices echoing through the water, all can be re-examined in this context. Were these myths attempts to explain fleeting encounters? Did our ancestors witness something extraordinary, then clothe it in the language of gods and monsters? The parallels between the trench and distant moons grow unsettling. On Europa, beneath miles of ice, scientists expect oceans warmed by volcanic vents. On Enceladus, geysers spew salt water into space, carrying whispers of chemical compounds linked to life. NASA plans missions to search these oceans for microbial traces. Yet beneath our feet, beneath our ships, in the trench itself, there is already such a world waiting. What if it has been waiting far longer than we imagine? The most disturbing theory is not that extraterrestrial life resembles trench creatures. It is that trench life may be extraterrestrial, that in the distant past, as Earth was bombarded by comets and asteroids, seeds of life were planted here. Some rose to the surface, adapted, evolved into the biosphere we know. Others remained deep, unchanged, surviving untouched for billions of years. Alien not in origin alone, but in isolation. Creatures that never shared our evolutionary tree, never walked our paths, never breathed our air. A hidden ecosystem, ancient, foreign, unknowable. And so the abyss becomes a question not just of science, but of philosophy. If such beings exist, are they aware of us? Do they know we float above them, blind in our ignorance? Or are we to them what the stars are to us, distant, untouchable, irrelevant? The thought unsettles, for it reverses the telescope. We are no longer the seekers of alien life. We may be the curiosities, observed from below by eyes adapted to eternal dark. Governments, too, have entertained such whispers. During the Cold War, when paranoia ran high and the unknown was seen as threat, records show unusual attention given to deep ocean anomalies. Naval reports of moving objects faster than submarines, impossible maneuvers beneath the waves, signals with no origin. The trench was often at the heart of these mysteries. Files were classified, conclusions obscured. For public reassurance, silence was maintained. Yet the silence itself speaks volumes. What would it mean if the Mariana Trench is not merely Earth's deepest point, but a threshold to an alien domain? Would humanity dare cross it? Or would we, as we so often do, weaponize the knowledge, turning mystery into strategy, awe into fear? For now, the trench remains mostly untouched, shielded not by walls, but by its own hostility to human presence. Darkness, cold, and crushing pressure act as guardians, preserving whatever lies within. But technology advances. Submersibles grow stronger. Sensors reach further. Soon, we may trespass into regions never before disturbed. And when we do, the question will shift from "are we alone?" to "are we intruding?" The alien abyss waits in silence. Whether it harbors microbial whispers or colossal intelligences, its truth lies hidden beneath miles of crushing sea. Humanity listens, speculates, fears, but does not yet know. And perhaps that is mercy. For in the stillness of those waters, beyond light and beyond air, there may already exist an answer too profound, too terrifying for us to hear. The abyss has always devoured the curious, not with teeth nor with claws, but with silence. The Mariana Trench has swallowed ships, crippled machines, and haunted the minds of those who dared descend. It is not just the crushing weight of water that threatens intruders. It is something far more insidious. In the archives of deep-sea exploration lie reports, too unsettling to publish widely. Submersibles that lost communication for minutes at a time, only to resurface with systems inexplicably fried. Cameras that returned with blank reels, their film warped as though scorched from within. Sensors that registered vast moving forms, only for the data to vanish in corrupted bursts of static. These were logged as malfunctions, technical errors, the excuses of science when faced with the incomprehensible. But the pattern was unmistakable. The deeper the descent, the stranger the silence. There are the human accounts, those few who live to tell of their encounters. Divers, scientists, technicians who returned pale and broken, haunted by visions they could neither dismiss nor explain. One spoke of a light beneath him, brighter than any submersible lamp, moving deliberately, circling as if curious. Another described the sudden, overwhelming sensation of being watched, a gaze so oppressive, crushed harder than the ocean itself. They returned trembling, unable to sleep, tormented by recurring dreams of vast shadows drifting just beyond their sight. A handful whispered of voices' muffled tones transmitted through the hull, indecipherable yet deliberate. When they repeated their claims, colleagues dismissed them as auditory hallucinations brought on by pressure, stress, or oxygen imbalance. Yet these reports emerged again and again, across years, across different expeditions, as though scripted by the trench itself. Some never returned at all. There are expeditions whose records end abruptly, files that vanish from official archives. Families were told of accidents, implosions, mechanical failures, storms at sea. But eyewitness fragments suggest otherwise. A Japanese research team in the 1980s reported unexplained lights near the descent point of one such mission, shimmering beneath the waves before fading into nothingness. Fishermen in the Pacific have spoken of sudden eruptions of bubbles, as though something vast had stirred far below, releasing the ocean's hidden breath. For survivors, the experience becomes a psychological curse. A few turned reclusive, abandoning careers, refusing interviews. Others spiraled into obsession, sketching the same shapes over and over, towering silhouettes, appendages like spears of shadow, or eyes the size of cities, staring upward from the abyss. Skeptics dismissed these drawings as the products of fractured minds. Yet the similarity between them, across decades and across continents, suggests something more sinister. There is a darker implication buried beneath these tales, that what is seen in the trench is not hallucination, but revelation. That the human mind, unshielded in those depths, is exposed to forces it cannot process, glimpses of something vast, incomprehensible, and real. Pressure alone does not explain the consistency of the visions, nor the fear described as beyond instinct, primal, and imposed, as though the abyss itself had entered their minds. Conspiracies swirl around these vanished expeditions. Some claim that governments quietly monitor these reports, sifting survivor accounts for patterns, classifying details that align too closely across testimonies. The hallucinations are logged, studied, hidden, filed under secrecy, as if they were not the ramblings of the traumatized, but fragments of truth too volatile for public knowledge. And yet, whispers persist. Stories of divers who, before they vanished, radioed messages of terror. Something is here. It's not water I'm sinking into, it's alive. One tape, said to have circulated briefly among naval circles, allegedly captured the screams of a pilot begging to ascend, followed by silence, and then a low, resonant hum, so deep it shook the speakers that played it. Officially, no such recording exists. But unofficially, those who claim to have heard it say it never leaves the mind. The trench does not simply drown explorers, it changes them. Survivors describe sensations that linger long after resurfacing. Vertigo, insomnia, sudden fits of paranoia. Some say their hearing never returned to normal. They report low vibrations, distant thuds, like an endless heartbeat rising from the floor of the sea. Medical examinations find no physical cause. And yet, in the silence of night, they hear it still. History is filled with warnings disguised as stories. Sailors of old spoke of madness from the deep, of men who leapt willingly overboard, claiming to see lights beneath the waves calling them down. Ancient cultures told of the drowning song, a sound that lured the curious to watery graves. Today, science calls it nitrogen narcosis or auditory illusion. But the trench reminds us that every myth begins somewhere, perhaps, with a truth too unsettling to accept. The abyss leaves no monuments, no bones for us to recover, no wreckage to map. What it takes, it keeps. And when it does return its prey, it is only through broken minds and scattered whispers. Survivors' tales are fragile things, easily dismissed by the rational world. Yet when gathered, compared, and studied, they form a tapestry of dread, a picture that suggests the abyss is not empty, but inhabited, and perhaps it does not welcome our intrusion. The greatest horror of the Mariana Trench may not be what lies hidden in its crushing dark. It may be the realization that it notices us, that it reaches into the human mind and leaves its fingerprints there, that our most terrifying visions are not delusions at all, but glimpses of its truth, permitted for reasons we cannot yet imagine. The abyss does not need to kill to conquer. It only needs to show us what it is for a moment before letting us resurface. And once we have seen, we are never the same. The Mariana Trench is not simply an abyss to be conquered or a riddle to be solved. It is part of Earth's own heartbeat, a hidden chamber where balance is maintained in ways we barely comprehend. Its vast depths regulate pressure, circulate currents, and cradle ecosystems that, though unseen, quietly shape the stability of the world above. And yet, In our ambition, we look at this chasm not with reverence, but with hunger. Scientists speak of the trench as a carbon vault, a place where organic matter sinks and is locked away for millennia. In silence, it performs an act of preservation that tempers our climate, slowing catastrophe. But what happens if we disturb it? If our machines, our mining drills, our desperate search for rare metals rupture the abyss and stir what has been buried for ages, we risk awakening not only geological forces, but biochemical ones, currents of methane, toxins, even pathogens sealed away since before humanity drew breath. Already, proposals circulate in boardrooms and research centers. Plans for deep-sea mining, harvesting of rare earth minerals, extraction of resources that fuel our insatiable technologies. But the trench is no ordinary frontier. Its pressures and ecosystems operate in ways alien to us. To interfere is to tamper with machinery older than time, a system that holds equilibrium not by design, but by necessity. The terrifying truth is that we do not know what waits should that balance collapse. The release of stored carbon could unravel climate stability with a violence far beyond human control. Unknown microbes, preserved in crushing cold, could rise like ancient plagues. And in seeking progress, we may find extinction. Yet it is not only extraction that tempts us. For some, the trench is imagined as a site of potential colonization, a training ground for survival in hostile worlds. If we cannot live in the abyss of our own oceans, how can we expect to inhabit the oceans beneath Europa's ice or Enceladus crust? Some suggest that learning to build colonies in the trench could prepare us for extraterrestrial frontiers. But in doing so, we risk forgetting this abyss is not empty. It is already occupied by forms of life adapted to pressures that would crush us in an instant. To impose ourselves, there is not colonization, it is intrusion. History has shown what happens when humanity treats new worlds as empty canvases. Forests burned, rivers poisoned, civilizations erased. What then of the abyss, where ecosystems function beyond our comprehension? To tamper with them is not exploration, but arrogance. And arrogance has always been our downfall. The trench reflects a paradox of human ambition. We are drawn to it by the same force that propelled us into space: curiosity, conquest, the hunger to know. Yet what if knowledge itself is the danger? Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. Some depths, once disturbed, cannot be silenced again. The warnings are written in the abyss itself. Each failed expedition, each corrupted recording, each survivor whispering of lights and shadows. These may be less anomaly than omen. The trench resists us, not with violence, but with silence, as though reminding us that not all places exist for human trespass. And yet, the temptation grows. As the world's resources dwindle, the abyss becomes not only mystery, but opportunity. Corporations whisper of profit. Governments whisper of power. Scientists whisper of discovery. Each voice overlooks the same truth. The Mariana Trench is not a resource. It is a wound in the planet, a hidden regulator of forces beyond our reach. To prod it carelessly may be to trigger consequences we cannot contain. Perhaps the greater horror is not what lurks within the trench, but what we might unleash by disturbing it. The unknown creatures we fear may be less dangerous than the collapse of balances that have safeguarded us for millennia. We speak of monsters, but the greatest monster may be ourselves, armed with technology, blinded by need, willing to gamble with forces older than the continents. The abyss has endured without us, and it will endure after us. The question is whether our intrusion will hasten our own vanishing. The trench may not need to rise against us. It may only need to be opened by our hands, its silence broken, its balance shattered. And then, the consequences will spread not only across the ocean, but across the world. In the end, the Mariana Trench is a mirror. It shows us our limits, our hunger, our hubris. It asks a question that grows more urgent with each passing year. Will we treat the abyss as a teacher or as a prize? Will we respect its silence, or will we break it in pursuit of knowledge we are not prepared to bear? The answers we choose will shape not only our future, but the planet's. For in tampering with the trench, we tamper with the foundations of Earth itself. And in that gamble, we may find the abyss staring back not with malice, but with indifference, reminding us that humanity was never its master, only its guest. We began with questions. What lives in the dark? What secrets lie hidden in Earth's deepest wound? What truths does the abyss withhold? But the Mariana Trench has given us no answers. Only silence, only shadows, only a mirror turned back upon ourselves. The deeper we descended, the more it became clear. The trench was not simply hiding life, it was exposing humanity. Our hunger, our arrogance, our insatiable urge to pry open what should remain closed. The abyss did not reveal monsters. It revealed us. For every sonar anomaly, every unexplainable sound, every fleeting glimpse of light or movement, there are countless theories. We say it must be life, or pressure, or geology. But perhaps the abyss is not a frontier of discovery. It is a boundary, a barrier drawn by the Earth itself, a warning disguised as depth. Still, we press forward. Our machines go deeper. Our records pile higher. Our whispers grow louder. Yet the trench endures in silence, and silence, too, can be an answer. There is a story humans have always told, that knowledge is the highest virtue, that discovery redeems us, that light must banish darkness. But in chasing light into this abyss, perhaps we miss the truth. Some darkness is not meant to be conquered. Some silence is not meant to be broken. The Mariana Trench does not roar or rage. It does not resist us with force. Instead, it waits, a pressure unchanging, a silence unbroken, a mouth that swallows everything and gives nothing back. And in that stillness lies the most unsettling possibility of all, that we are not prepared to face what we seek, that it is not the abyss that is alien, but us, that the true terror lies in our reflection against the void. We descend believing we are explorers. But what if, in the eyes of the abyss, we are intruders? Trespassers in a place not built for us, knocking upon a door we cannot see, demanding it open. And if it does open, what then? The history of humankind is written in doors we should never have unlocked. The atom split, the forest razed, the sky poisoned. Always believing the price of discovery is worth paying. Always believing we will remain in control. But the abyss is different. Here, the price is unknown, and the silence suggests we may not live long enough to learn it. Some scientists whisper of hidden ecosystems, of colossal beings that move in shadow. Some governments speak in classified tones of signals that vanish into static. Some explorers return with stories they cannot explain, visions they cannot dismiss. And yet, the abyss offers no confirmation, no denial, only silence. Perhaps that silence is the warning. Perhaps that silence is the answer. Perhaps that silence is the abyss staring back. For when we gaze into its depths, we do not find monsters or gods or revelations. We find the measure of our own hunger, our compulsion to consume, to know, to conquer. And the trench asks the question we fear most. What if that hunger is the very thing that destroys us? We came seeking truths buried in water and stone, but what we uncovered was darker, the endless capacity for our own destruction. The Mariana Trench does not need to destroy us. It needs only to remain what it is: vast, silent, untouchable. It is we who will undo ourselves if we mistake its silence for weakness, if we mistake its emptiness for opportunity. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is refusal. Silence is power. Silence is the last, unyielding reminder that some places are not ours to claim. And so the abyss waits, not with malice, not with mercy, simply with the patience of eternity. We stand on the edge of a choice, to keep drilling diving, searching, prying, or to accept that some mysteries are not ours to solve. But history suggests a choice has already been made. We will descend again. We will listen again. We will knock upon the abyss until it finally answers. And when it does, the sound that comes back may not be discovery. It may be the echo of our own undoing. The Mariana Trench remains silent. But in its silence, the abyss speaks. It tells us, beware. For when you stare too long into the abyss stares back.